Hello, everyone. Oh, wow, what a way to start a talk on artificial intelligence with that. I'm sure as many of you at this point, we are tired of hearing about artificial intelligence. But unfortunately, it seems like for the next couple of years, this is what our future holds. My name is Vulane Mthembu, and the title for my talk today is, of course, Machine Speaks. It comes from a Zulu, it's a Zulu saying that says, Mshini uyakhuluma, and the direct translation is the machine speaks. It has many meanings. It can mean a gun when it shoots. It also can mean a literal meaning of a machine in terms of the ghost in the machine. So we are going to try our best today to speak about AI in Africa, which is quite a challenge. So who am I? I'm an artist, composer. I'm a technologist, innovation, and Gamebox curator for the Goethe-Institut for Sub-Saharan Africa. And also I'm an open data and worker cooperative advocate. I'm also a founder of a multidisciplinary practice called Divide by Zero Research. Now, a lot of my work is influenced by these two thinkers who I believe are leading the discourse a lot in thought about machine learning or AI and technology in terms of Africa, where we are and where we are looking in the future. One thing I appreciated earlier when Mari was introducing me earlier, I appreciated that she avoided by all means, I don't know whether it was subconscious or conscious, to use the word Global South. Now from some of us from Global South, that term has not carried such a positive sort of connotation as of late. So of course, most people are still welcome to use it, but it is getting a sense of a sort of not so great connotation to it. So these two books, which the first one is The Black Technical Object, and Machine Learning and Aspiration of Black Being by Dr. Rahman Amaro, and the Taking African Agency Seriously Against Decolonization forms a lot of my thought processes and the work that most of the collective and the peers and colleagues that I work with focus on. Basically, as you can see, most of the Black Technical Object is focusing mostly on how, as we all know, there are intrinsic biases that are in place using traditional Western methods of investigating and also doing research on artificial intelligence, and therefore ask for the agency of involvement of most people from Africa and of people who are not also from your traditional sources of information, which are mostly from the West. And the next one is decolonization. The decolonization, the word also, as well as that word Global South, has also been a bit tainted of late and can mean many multiple things. And now Olufemi posits a view where we can actually take that away from using the word of decolonization for us as Africans, and also look at it from a different perspective, avoiding all those connotations of performative morality and authenticity that usually comes from this word now, which is what it has become. So most of the work that I usually do and my peers do, we avoid a lot of using this word. And I do know it's a word that is heavily involved in a lot of discourse, but we try and stray away. It could mean many things for many people. I will quickly try as well to mention a little bit of my practice and work I've done in the past few years, and then veer into the other work that is done on some parts of the continent. As we know, Africa is quite a big continent, and it's quite broad, the work. So we're going to select some of the works that are done in that region. So in 2021, this is one of the projects I was involved in making, which is Nguni Mekina, which is basically a thought experiment, which was trying to see basically from a context of how much of the data sets that are out there are available for us to create any musical any musical sort of project or any music based on machine learning. And this, of course, was very challenging, particularly at the time we started. The project was reached in 2021, but it was started in 2019. And while we were creating it, it was very difficult because, again, we have that issue of not having many resources and data sets that could translate the work that we're trying to do and making music in terms of an African context. So what we did use was open source tools, which are the Maestro dataset and also Google Magenta. And we tried to get some sort of sonic, but it wasn't really a project to answer any question. It was more a project to ask questions and see how far and how convincing we can get audio to sound around then. And it also, in the context of African projects and African work. And we have a little bit of a piece from that project. So that's not the complete piece. Of course, it's a snippet of what we were able to achieve then. The next step, of course, was when we discovered what we could do with the data sets that we had and the resources that we had was to take it to the next level. And this is Nguni 2, and it was also open source, as you can see, and all the tools, including the MIDI files from the initial project, and all the data sets we used were also shared with all the different technologists and other creators around the world. And we asked to collaborate with everyone. It was mostly with musicians who are also very known in the field and who are traditionally trained. And we asked them to take this one step further and sort of see how they can interpret that music and that was created by AI and collaborate with it. And then what came out of that was Nguni 2. And one of the interesting things about Nguni 2 as well was that we also used the recording of the last new speaker whose name is Katrina Esau. Esau is, in 2021, was the last speaker of a language called Tmu. It is now could be considered a dead language as she's the final speaker of the language. And then we had their recording also imbued in this audio files with these collaborators. So this also was serving as an archive. And then I have a little bit of a snippet of that.
The language has 5 clicks. So we use a single /4, double /4, exclamation mark 4. And an equal mark with a slash through it, 4. And then a circle with a dot in the middle, 4.
Now, what you are hearing there are the 5 vowel symbols of that language, and you're literally hearing the last speaker of a language who, in the next few years, will not be existing at all. So this was quite a very emotional project to work on. And also, I've had the fortune in the last few years as well to have worked with the University of Stellenbosch in guest editing the Africa in AI edition of the HERRI journal. And one of the contributors was a good friend of mine, fellow artist and researcher, Nolan also Dennis, whose project toward misrecognition, Project Notes on a Haunting Thing, was one of the projects as well I highlighted there. Now, what is very important, I believe for me and for many of my peers in the continent is how we interpret artificial intelligence in relation to our background in terms of where we come from, in terms of our lived experience, which I believe every culture in the world deserves that. And as a result, Nolan's work also is heavily, not most of it as well, but all of it, most of it speaks a lot about our Black consciousness and how many things are viewed through the lens of liberation, and also looking at how we as a people can make our own way in the world in terms of AI, or in terms of whether it could be technology, or in terms of anyways in terms of social activism as well. Now, this, as you can see, is a very interesting project where he envisions, as you can see, that is a ticker. You'll have a piece of paper, a receipt that is printing a sort of conversation that is imagined between Frantz Fanon and, of course, Steve Biko. And this is using a word hold and touch, and using an AI and algorithms to interpret those words and have this conversation between these two AIs speaking with each other. And this was the result of that. The next project I will speak about as well, also from South Africa, between Zawadi Yamungu, Smonile Kumete, Greer Valley, myself, and Nolan Ozol Dennis, is from a 2022 project, which is Udlelwane, which is perpetuity. Now, another thing that is very important as well, that I feel everyone should be given an opportunity to do, and when I mean everyone, I mean all cultures and communities, is using technology to interpret and also sometimes even enhance or help interaction with certain traditions. Like this was one of the projects that did that. So, for example, in here, what you have Zawadi Yamungu, who's a very prolific makweyane player, which is a traditional African instrument. And the challenge with recording a makweyane is that when you hold makweyane and you hold it very close to your chest, when you mic it, it's almost like it's built, as you can see that's a picture of her in the background. It is built with a calabash, and it's got a hole opening on the other side. Now the issue is that the sound that comes out of the calabash is not facing the audience as in a traditional instrument like a guitar, whereas you can mic it easily on the other side. Because the hole is facing the opposite end, and it's facing the player most of the time, and it's a very intimate instrument played by women in very intimate settings, there's always been a challenge to record that instrument. So we found a way around that, where we were trying to figure out how, because in all the time, most times when you record this instrument, the most important part of it, the intimacy of it, is felt through the player's body. It's usually played against the bosom of the player, and if you mic it, obviously you're not getting exactly a sound like a guitar. You won't get the accurate sound of how the instrument works. So one of the solutions we found was to actually record this, and also trying to emulate the feeling of the audience putting their head against the bosom of the player, because that's the way it should be felt, to feel how that player feels the instrument when they play. Because the hole that the sound comes through is facing the player, not the audience. So before this project, most of the time people were not hearing the sound as it should have been, because the instrument doesn't face the audience, it faces the player. It's more for the player than the audience. So that way we had transducers installed in the gallery, and we had people walk into the gallery, and as they walk into the gallery, we had panels and transistors installed under the panels, and people could hear the sound as they put their heads on the panels and on the floor, on the ground, on the walls, as you can see. So you would have the most loudest, quiet concert ever, where you walk in a very loud room, but you can't hear anything, and the only way to hear that instrument was to put your head across, of course, in the walls, touch the wall, and that's the only way you were able to hear it. So sort of emulating that feeling of listening. As I mentioned before, it's always a challenge when asked to speak about AI in Africa, because Africa is huge. It's a huge, it's a continent, you know, and there's a tendency as well of always grouping Africa into one monolith. I mean, Africa is not a country, right? And so also when you're talking about AI, what are we talking about? Are we talking about AI in terms of, you know, natural language processing? Are we talking about LLMs? What are we talking about? Computer vision? Are we just talking about policies, about AI? Are we talking about ethics? What are we talking? Are we talking about art, interdisciplinary work? I mean, this is quite broad, and multiply this by the number of countries in Africa, and you can see the task that's presented to me today. So. And it's quite a challenge. Although I will admit, at a much better position than most of my peers in terms of having worked with the Goethe-Institut in terms of my position as an innovation officer. I'm able to also tap into what my colleagues across the region are able to have, but it is almost impossible, of course, to cover the scope of whatever is happening everywhere in Africa. So that was one of my challenges, what to hone in for this particular talk. So I would like to highlight first, because most people may not be also aware of how much research is also happening in the continent outside of just artistic, multi and interdisciplinary work. So we have also 3 very interesting conferences that take place annually across the region. We have the South African Conference for Artificial Intelligence Research, which is run by the University of Johannesburg, which is an annual conference as well, where people present their research and papers in AI research held in South Africa. We have the AI Expo, which I believe will be in its 3rd year, mostly focused on policy and ethics around the African continent. And we also have the Deep Learning in Durban, which takes place in multiple parts of Africa. Sorry, I have to keep moving to my tablet as my clicker is not functioning. So, as that is much, as I mentioned, that is very much in terms of the cut and dry of the scientific research. So a lot of good, interesting stuff is coming out of Africa in terms of that. But as you might have guessed, most of the presentation today will lean a lot towards the artistic and the interdisciplinary work that happens when we use AI in arts, technology, and science. And besides the 2 books I mentioned earlier that influenced a lot of my thought, this is also one of the very important books that also influence a lot of ways that I interact with technology and science, being that I have a very strong game developer background and also studied computer science and have a background in information technology. I love reading this book. I don't know how many times I have read Homo Ludens by Huizinga, because what it posits as the driver of culture is quite something that's dear to me, which is the playfulness, that we are all Homo Ludens instead of Homo sapiens, because that's what we exist to do, and we move culture forward, we build machines, we do all these sort of things, and we find new things, and we make innovation possible because we are always playing, always tinkering, and I try to maintain that, that attitude throughout. What's also important to know is that besides just pure research and work, which could be scientific or technological, South Africa and also the region is heavily involved in a lot of interesting dialogue and things that are around AI, which are far beyond your natural or simple basic implementations, which what most people would believe. There's also, as you can see, there's always space for discourse, because Africa, I believe, has a unique perspective when it comes to artificial intelligence. This will allow, of course, for experimentation, innovation, and exploration. And one of the other projects that now, as I wear many hats as the innovation officer for the Institute, has been the AI to Amplify Fellowship Project, where we got a lot of people working from across the globe coming together in teams to talk about the decentralization of the AI discourse, where we address this disparity as well between the global north and the global south, which can become too much and can blindside us if we focus too much on those things. Because with this decentralization and also including as many diverse teams as from many diverse communities as possible to work on projects around AI, we address a lot of things around biases, around our own also intrinsic sort of issues that we might have that will not give us a very accurate or a very good understanding of this technology and how it affects other people as well who might not necessarily look like us. So the AI to Amplify project was basically gathering a group of teams from across the globe. It was mainly headed by the Institute in Johannesburg and in Munich, and we got a few groups together, and they were competing in this fellowship. And this and two projects among four were selected to be the final projects, and one of them was AI for Good, and the other one was Maskio. AI for Good was an LLM chatbot, which basically provides essential menstrual knowledge to young women and girls. And Maskio is also a project that helps people who are deaf and also who are heavy sleepers. Now, this is also using AI as well, besides artistic and also more traditional implementation of AI. This is also using AI in the continent to achieve social good. And also seeing how it can help and assist people with disabilities and people who might not have access to certain tools or information. So that is also something that is done on the continent. Another project that we were involved with was the NAO Robot in Residence project. In that project, we had a NAO Robot, which, as many of you know, is developed by SoftBank Robotics. The NAO Robot in Residence is basically a small robot that is designed mostly for research. We took it around South Africa around Africa on a roving residency, visiting many countries in Africa. As you can see, it visited Lagos, Nairobi, Abidjan, and many other cities. And each city, the robot was partnered with scientists and artists to work together on something. Now, what was very interesting about this project was that as the robot was traveling across the region, it will change behavior, because every time it gets to another country, its memory gets erased, it gets trained again, and it kept changing behavior depending on the culture and the customs of that country. For example, in Lagos, they were able to teach it to identify facial markings, and as a result, and to give a bit of a background there, most nations in Africa, you can identify them by having very unique facial markings, and that also affects their culture. That also goes into also how they speak as well, their language as well. So in Lagos, they trained the robot to identify certain tribes and certain cultures as well within Africa, and by just looking at the person, it will identify who they are, and then as a result, respond with the language that that person speaks, and also adopt those natural interactions, with that person. Local interactions with the person. Now, what was very important about this as well, as I mentioned earlier, it is very important. There's a lot of talks around the ethics of projects like these, and therefore this is something we spend a lot of time looking when we are conceptualizing and trying to work on projects such as these. What was very, like I said as well, so it was very important for us to make sure that the people that are working with this robot and who are training this robot are from those communities, meaning you do not have someone else coming in and sort of like training this robot just because, okay, they studied anthropology or whatever the case might be and feel that they understand the community. You have the people from those communities, hence why we took the robot across the region, so it works, it stays on a 4-month residency in each country, and then works, and then the people from that region work with that robot. So you avoid those sort of situations. So that's what happened there, and then in South Africa, it went to the Africa Open Institute in Cape Town, and there the robot learned to play some musical instruments with an improvisation team. All right, so these were the collaborators for the NAO Robot in Residence project. And this, on my right, you have the NAO humanoid robot with the University of Stellenbosch experimental team. And you have there a very instantly recognizable spot, which is a quadruped. Now, when the NAO arrived in South Africa, we had the opportunity of also incorporating foster dynamics spot in the project, which proved very challenging. And one of the reasons, of course, was that spot its systems are very much locked down, and it's very highly proprietary, despite being also mostly exclusively developed for industry. We wanted to see how far we can push, having it interact with artists as well and creatives, to see what can come and technologies to see what could come out of that. And because of the limited time, we didn't get that far in terms of spot. Again, because of the closed system, and as you can, on the outside, on the right, you hear that's now here there, and they named now Refile in Cape Town, and that's where Refile is because she can recognize sound, she can speak, she can move. They had mic'd her up, so the different sort of triggers will control that computer that over there to give out certain notes and direction to the rest of the team, and also the cues, getting the cues from the team fed back into NAO, so that it's almost as if they are playing together, right? I skipped that video a little bit of Spot, but basically with Spot, all we got to do with Spot is what you've seen in videos as well, just the usual dancing. We couldn't get much in terms of Spot interacting with the artists. Oh, that's a Spot. Now, something that has been happening in the last few years that has been very interesting is not much is known about South African research and work done in the space. But most people will be surprised to know that for the first time, or I wouldn't say for the first time, I would say maybe in the last few years, there's been such a huge sort of interest and also support and a resurgence of interest of a lot of researchers coming from the region, not only working for the big organizations around the world or institutions around the world that are making a lot of great research in AI, but also a lot of development, particularly in large language models that are developed specifically from the region as well, coming to the fore. As you can see here, this is the Time Magazine's 100 most influential people cover, and there are 2 South Africans already on that cover, which means that Africa is really not that far when we are talking about AI. And this is and also presents quite a lot of interesting opportunities for many people in that region. And also, as I mentioned earlier, in my when I spoke about the AI to Amplify project, as I mentioned, it was conceived by the teams in South Africa and also in Munich, but that went as far as also getting a lot of interest worldwide, where we had even participants and alum from the MIT Media Lab and the Honda Innovation Lab as well, joining the team in creating those prototypes, those AI-based prototypes. Despite all of that, and all the progress that is made worldwide, of course, it will be amiss of me and I'm sure we've been hearing, I did see a look at the program that we have at KIKK, and I did see there's a lot of AI talk, a lot of talk about machine learning and these sort of emerging technologies. But it would be amiss of me not to talk about something that's on everyone's mind, and I'm sure you have talked about it amongst yourselves as well, and that is the environmental and climate cost of this. This is something that's very dear to me. As much as I love innovation, I love always doing and working in these interesting projects that I shared with you, with as many people as possible, but these sort of concerns are something that we need to really take into consideration. If a single prompt is costing this much water in a data center to cool a data center, is it worth it? Or how long can we sustain this to create memes of cats? And so that's my first challenge that I see moving into the future that we have to deal with. And my other challenge, which is also, this is now looking into the future, that I feel we still need to deal with, and I don't think we have dealt with, and it's getting worse by the day, is proof of humanness. Because right now we do not have a foolproof systems besides all the the GANs that are being created to sort of counteract AI systems and sort of detect those things, but we do not have a foolproof system that can also be sustainable to prove humanness. And I think in the next few years, this will be very important to be able to see that the person that you are really talking to on the other side of the screen is a human. And this leads to my next project, which I'm currently working with, which will involve a lot around that, on how do you prove that now in this day and age that what you are interacting with is a human being. Over the call, when you're talking to someone, who you are talking to on the other side is really a human. There are two ways for me that are very interesting in how we can combat this moving forward, and it's something, like I mentioned, that we are having conceptualizing a few projects around. The first one is the one that we have been working on with my colleagues for the last 3 years, and that is using the mathematical way of trying to prove that whoever you're talking to or whoever you're interacting or who you're seeing on the screen is most probably a human, and that is using zero knowledge proofs. Or another one, which is using quantum solutions. Now, this I must say is the most exciting to me, the quantum way of solving things, because in the last year we were fortunate enough to work on a project called Studio Quantum, where we got a few universities in Africa, including the Structured Light Lab, to work with also on a multidisciplinary project with artists around quantum technologies, how they might affect AI, and also how they might affect our everyday lives. And the concept of particle entanglement was something that kept coming up again and again. Not only, of course, our quantum solutions, quantum computing is also going to be, besides just being an underlying technology moving forward in terms of implementation of AI in the future, in terms of also power and compute, because the cost compute of doing AI, of calculating, of running this prompts is getting out of hand. This is also quite something that could be very useful. But also, for me, that the interest is more on actually also proving humanness, because at the quantum level, if you can engage with systems in that way and use some of this phenomena to actually prove that the person that you are talking with or the figure or whatever you're interacting with can be proved at that level, then we could we could solve a lot of problems moving into the future. And some of the work that was shared on Studio Quantum was quite interesting. You can go online as well, just search for Studio Quantum. You'll see some of the projects that are I don't have much time to really explain it or what was going on in that project, but there were really a lot of fascinating outcomes on that. So I would like to mention as well, before I exit the stage, that as I mentioned earlier, Africa is a huge continent. And every day, as you might have seen, I'm sure it's the same as well here in Europe, there are new technologies being exploited. There's new ways of doing things. There's always something that is coming that's just around the horizon. For me, I find that very exciting. I know for most people, they might see that as a challenge. I'm sure as I'm speaking to you right now, the reason as well why this project with zero knowledge proofs has taken so long is because every time we think we're somewhere close to maybe finding really this great thing that we can present to people and have a big eureka moment with everyone, you wake up the next morning, something new has been invented. Now you have to change it all over again and also try to incorporate that. But for me, this is not a challenge. This is also not something that I frown upon. This I find is a great opportunity. I do not feel there's an end of the road to research being done in AI or machine learning or in the interdisciplinary work between artists, technologists, and scientists in that space. I feel it's a lifelong search. It will forever be changing. And I love that it's moving this quickly because not one person can claim knowledge to know everything on this. Because as I'm speaking right now, I'm sure this slide is already outdated, and I love that. So that I might wake up tomorrow and then half this information that is here is already incorrect. That is beautiful because someone would have moved ahead and pushed and tried to get to understanding and also solving these problems that I've shown tonight. So yeah, like I mentioned, my name is Vulane Mthembu, and thank you very much for joining my talk. And ngiyabonga means thank you in Zulu, my language.